Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kristen Clark. I'm President and Executive Director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. And we thank you for joining us for a discussion today about the challenging road ahead on the civil rights landscape. This afternoon, we're going to take a look back at some of the major challenges and victories of 2020 and take a peek at what we think will be some of the major battles for civil rights and racial justice as we move into 2021. We'll also showcase our annual awards honorees. This is a time where we take a moment to salute the great heroes who stand with us in doing our work, our courageous clients, our partners in the fight for justice, and all of those who work with us to help us advance our mission of ensuring equal justice under law for all. We've got a very engaging and exciting program in store for you today. But before we begin, I want to toss the floor over to my good friend, Roland Martin, who is the host for today's program.
All right, Kristen, certainly appreciate it. Glad to have all of you here for this celebration. First of all, recognizing the great work that folks do in the area of civil rights and law. Hugely important in this country, especially when we see what is happening all across the nation, especially right now where all eyes are on Georgia. And I want to start there, Kristen, because what we're looking at, we just saw in the most recent days where you have Republicans who want to change the laws if they changed that made it easy for folks to vote because Joe Biden wins Georgia. And this reminds me of what happened in 2008 when Obama wins North Carolina by 14,100 votes. Republicans are like, oh, no, we got to change this because we can't have that. And that's what we're seeing. What we're seeing is the attack on voting rights is all because they want to shrink the populace of those who are able to vote in order to win. It's not about, hey, this whole notion of democracy and, everybody gets right to vote. No, that's really not what this is all about. And so y'all are in a constant battle from all parts of the country in this area.
Yeah, 155 million Americans made their voice heard. And this is remarkable because it was all done during a pandemic. And through our work at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law and our nonpartisan election protection program, we were busy in the courts this year, really using the courts to beat back states that were not doing enough to acknowledge the pandemic and the ways in which the pandemic made it harder for people to vote. We brought countless lawsuits to fight for equal and open access to absentee ballots, to fight for more drop boxes to give people options to return those ballots. We fought to lift some of the unnecessary restrictions that voters were up against. And you're right, Roland, right now what we are seeing is quite remarkable. The election is over. It's been over for over 5 weeks now, but there are states that are working feverishly to, one, call into question the integrity of the 2020 election. But what we also know is that they are going to be, many states, actively working to roll back progress and to roll back gains. And so this is some of the most critical work that's going to be really kind of defining and shaping the work that we do going into the new year.
And it really is an attack on black people. When you see the targeting of Metro Atlanta, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Pennsylvania, this is a direct attack on black voters.
Yeah, I mean, we don't look at this work through a partisan lens. For us, it's about whether black voters and voters of color get voice in our democracy. And you are exactly right. There have been about 50 lawsuits filed since the November election, and many of those cases put a target on the backs of Black voters and voters of color. And so, we have filed about gotten involved in about 17 of the 50 or so cases that have been brought. And we're getting involved in these cases because we want to make sure that Black voters in particular are not disenfranchised by what seems to be a naked power grab in the wake of the November election, an attempt to call into question the integrity of the election.
We also have to, we often talk about what is going on here and how this is crazy. It's a joke, but it really is an extreme danger to this republic. To have the state of Texas, my home state, the idiot attorney general, and I will say that without any problem, Ken Paxton, who's also under federal investigation, to file a lawsuit joined by 17 other states led by Republicans to sue Georgia. And then today, 106 House Republicans have signed an amicus brief asking the Supreme Court to literally overturn the will of the voters.
We believe in the rule of law, and we believe in ensuring that everyone has voice in our democracy. And the one thing that I've been heartened by is that courts are tossing these cases left and right. None of these cases are proving successful. And this latest case brought by Texas that's now in the hands of the Supreme Court, I am confident will be rejected. We're going to move to make sure that we have our voice heard in this case and stand up for Black voters. But, we'd have to essentially be tossing the Constitution out the door where the Supreme Court, 5 weeks after the election, take up that case from Texas and do anything in any way that silences the 155 million people who had their voice heard this election cycle.
But you also have, when it comes to the issue of civil rights, this executive order that Donald Trump signs that people don't understand how far-reaching it is. Rosa Clemente, for instance, had a speech canceled because it dealt with the issue of speaking about race. And so now all of a sudden, that thing now goes across the entire federal judiciary, goes across the entire federal government. And it's these actions that, for the person sitting at home, they may say, okay, executive order has no bearing on me. But it literally does, because you even had colleges who were saying, well, wait a minute, if we're getting now federal funds, we can't have discussions about diversity in race on our campuses. And so people are not necessarily thinking about how all these dots are connected when that type of thing comes down. You look at the Department of Justice going after Harvard for admissions. I mean, we can go on and on and on with the type of things, the actions taken that have a direct result on civil rights and civil liberties in this country.
There is a lot of work to be done to clean up the damage. There's going to be a lot of work in the road ahead to repeal executive orders like the one you're talking about, an executive order that threatens to take away federal funding from entities that want to conduct anti-racism training. A lot of work to address other executive orders that have rolled the clock back on civil rights. We're going to need to restore agencies like HUD and the Department of Education and the Justice Department and ensure that they're getting back in the business of protecting the rights of vulnerable communities. So as I reflect kind of on the road ahead, I'm thinking about a lot of this work that, will have tremendous implications on Black people, people of color, and other vulnerable communities.
Last question before we go to with the various honorees. Just really explain for the folks who are watching who really don't, I dare say, don't understand literally the day-to-day warfare, the day-to-day legal warfare that is happening in this country with Lawyers Committee and LDF and ACLU and all these groups. And then you have what's happening on the state level as well. I mean, y'all are literally engaging in a legal war every single day to protect what we've already gained. Forget trying to create something new, but just to protect where we are today.
Every day, I am reminded that we've made great progress when it comes to racial justice and civil rights in our country, but we know that those gains are fragile, and we've seen that over the last few years, that it is easy to roll back progress. And I am proud and honored to lead the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. We've been on the front lines of the fight, working hand in glove with organizations like the NAACP, like the National Urban League, like the Legal Defense Fund, and National Action Network, and so many others. And we just recently sat down with President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris to lay bare what we think are the core civil rights priorities for this next administration. And I'm really confident that working in partnership with law firms across our country and with our clients who courageously stand up with us every day, that we'll be able to really advance the cause of racial justice in our country.
Which also means that, look, let's be clear. Y'all are going to have to push him. The job of the Lawyers Committee, the job of civil rights groups, the job of people like Until Freedom and the New York Justice League, and I can go on and on, Black Lives Matter as well, is understand we are not here for the status quo. It is to push you as far and hard as you can go, because this is about, again, when you go to that Supreme Court, it's equal justice under law. That's what it's about. And the bottom line is some folk don't like being pushed, but tough. That's what happens when you run for president and you win.
Yeah. Well, I deem that our job every day to agitate for change, to push for the highest levels possible when it comes to justice and equality in our country. And we have agitated for the past 4 years, and we will continue to agitate in the road ahead. That is our job. We will not accept mediocrity when it comes to safeguarding the fragile rights of vulnerable people in our country.
Well, same goes for the people who we're honoring today. So let's go to our first one.
All right, so our first award today goes to Gay Johnson McDougall, who we're recognizing with our Lloyd Cutler Award. We're also going to be honoring a series of folks today, but actually, let me kind of kick things off, Roland, by just saying a quick word about the 2020 census, because we had a brutal fight over the last few years pushing for a fair and accurate census count of all people in our population. This issue is really critical because census data is used to ensure the fair distribution of billions of dollars in federal funding. That census data is used for redistricting that happens at every level in our country. And I want to talk about the fight for a fair 2020 census, and that was a fight carried out in partnership with the law firm Latham & Watkins. And maybe we can bring in now my colleague Ezra Rosenberg, who co-leads our voting rights project at the Lawyers Committee, to talk about some of that work and why it's so critical.
Thanks, Kristen, and hi, everyone. It's really an honor to be here today. One of the most important things that the government does, that the federal government does, is the census. It's the only thing that's in the United States Constitution that specifically says that the government must do this one thing, which is every 10 years count everybody. And it's important because, as Kristen says, it tells you who's going to represent you in every level of government, and it tells you how much money your communities are going to get for hospitals, for roads, for schools. And historically, communities of color have been drastically undercounted by the census. And that's why the Lawyers Committee has historically been active in making sure that there's a full and fair census count. And last year, we fought to get rid of the citizenship question that the Trump administration tried to add on to the census, because that would have reduced the response rate of communities of color. And this year, we fought on two different fronts. One, to get rid of an executive memorandum that would strip undocumented immigrants from the census count, and the other had to do with how the count itself was going to be handled. And we were lucky. We were lucky to have a firm, Latham and Watkins, and one of its leaders, Sadiq Hassani, to fight with us shoulder to shoulder and to make real and effective change. And we're honoring both the firm, Latham Watkins, with our Robert Mueller Award for Pro Bono Firm of the Year, and Sadiq, who happens to be a board member, as the best new board member of 2020. The partnership has been fabulous. I've not seen a firm that has, under such extreme pressure, worked so expertly and so creatively and so collegially and gotten the results that it's gotten. And we're thrilled today to have both Sadiq here and Melissa Sherry here. And Melissa has been just a fabulous leading advocate in at least a half dozen hearings and a hearing before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals on these two cases. So we thought we'd have a little chat with them about what they've done and about the census. And Sadiq and Melissa, I don't know who wants to field this, but tell us a little bit about why you and your firm thought it was important to work on these cases. You're on mute, I think.
Now I'm unmuted. Thank you so much, Ezra. I'll start and then I'll turn this over to Melissa, who's been leading the charge in so many ways with me and dozens of our colleagues at Latham. I joined the board of Lawyers Committee early this year, and boy, what a year 2020 turned out to be, right? It became filled to the brim with opportunities to do good work, and I watched in awe. I'll just start by saying I watched in awe as the Lawyers Committee has risen to every challenge, pole vaulted over it repeatedly on matter after matter, case after case, including with respect to the census and the apportionment matters that we had the great honor at Latham of being brought into and helping lead. The matters matter to us, right? The census matters because, as Kristen said earlier, and Ezra, as you alluded to, it touches on federal funding, it touches on apportionment in the House of Representatives, it touches on absolutely everything that the government is involved with over the course of the next decade. The census happens once every 10 years. And what's so critical about it, and it sort of is a broader issue in that making sure every person counts, making sure every person is counted is such an important part of all of those aspects, but also philosophically in this country. We've had the opportunity at Latham to join in, and we did that because of the importance of that issue to not just the country as a whole, everybody that lives in here, but in particular to communities that are hard to count, to communities that have been undercounted historically. We're talking about immigrants of all stripes. We're talking about communities of color. We're talking about Native Americans, and we're talking about those that are experiencing houselessness. All of those individuals in past censuses have not been counted commensurate with their actual numbers, and that has all sorts of repercussive effects over time. So when Latham when you all reached out to us, the Lawyers Committee at Latham, we jumped at the opportunity to be a part of making sure that everyone actually was counted and is counted. And that fight is ongoing. As you alluded, President Trump passed a memorandum in the summer that seeks to exclude undocumented immigrants from being used in the apportionment counts, and we're part of that fight, which is now up to the Supreme Court. And the longer and more detailed fight has been to make sure that the census itself actually counts everyone and wasn't truncated as the Trump administration sought to do. So let me kick it now to Melissa, who's one of my incredible colleagues at Latham, has really been leading the charge in this in the Ninth Circuit, all the way up to the Supreme Court, as we have fought to make sure everyone is counted. Melissa?
Yes, thank you. And thanks for having us here today and recognizing Latham for its work. But, even more than that, thank you for giving us the opportunity to work with you on these cases. To answer your question, I almost feel like the answer is how could we not? There is just so much at stake here that when we were asked to partner up on these cases, the answer was really clear and easy. And it has just kind of been confirmed over time. I mean, we have been in the trenches on these cases for months now. And there is still a lot to do, but looking back, it's just amazing to see what we've been able to accomplish working together. On the count side of things, every person matters, every day matters. That's been our mantra throughout this entire case. And because of this litigation, the Census Bureau was required to count for weeks longer than it wanted to, and millions more Americans were counted as a result of this litigation. It's just amazing to see everything that we've done and all the effort we've put in actually come to fruition, and to see some results. Like Sadiq said, one of the cases was argued before the Supreme Court recently, and to be able to watch the U.S. government, the Solicitor General, to have to stand up before the court and say, because of the California litigation, we are not going to get the total population numbers to the president by the end of the year. That was a really great moment for us to be able to see that. And so it's just been such a tremendous experience. And in what has been a truly challenging year, it's really moments like this and cases like this that remind us all that the fight is worth fighting, and that there is more fight to be done in the coming days, weeks, months, and years.
Thanks, both of you. And I want to emphasize that there were probably at least a dozen different lawyers who were working on these cases for Latham. And I'm sure it's more than that. Those are just the names I saw. And they were doing this for free. And it is really just a testament to the firm and a testament to the lawyers that you see here, Sadiq and Melissa and everyone else. And it's just been a pleasure for me to work with them. I could go on talking to them forever, but we have a lot of other honorees. And Kristen, I'm going to kick it back to you.
Ezra, and thanks so much to our partners at Latham and Watkins, who fought tooth and nail to make sure that we could do all that we could to get a fair and accurate 2020 census. The big democracy work that lies ahead is redistricting, and without that fair and accurate data, we won't have the building blocks to get fair maps for our school boards, city councils, state legislatures, congressional seats, and more. So a really important fight, and we're so grateful for Latham and Watkins standing up with us. So we're going to go next, Roland, to events that have been happening in Graham, North Carolina. And, people have been marching for Black lives and making clear that Black lives matter all year long. But people have also been connecting the power of the right to vote with the power of protest. And that's exactly what folks in North Carolina have been doing this season. They have been taking to the streets to peacefully, demonstrate and march to make clear that we will not tolerate racial violence and police violence in our country, but also to make clear that Black people will exercise the most powerful right to vote. And so we're going to honor some folks in North Carolina who have been doing some remarkable work. We're going to hear from Reverend Gregory Drumright and Quencelin shortly, but I just want to acknowledge kind of the battle that's been unfolding in North Carolina this season.
And of course, so what we're talking about is that what took place as they were on the last day to register in North Carolina, the police there pepper sprayed them.
That's right.
That story went national. If we have that video, let's go ahead and roll it. That story went national, and it caused, and in fact, when we interviewed Reverend Drumright, one of the things that he told us was that there was one brother who joined them there, and he was unable to. Now, this video here, of course, you're seeing that was at the George Floyd funeral. But what happened was they were protesting. There was a brother we talked to when we talked to Reverend Drumright. He said there was one guy who showed up and was really pained that he never got an opportunity to actually vote. And we're seeing these actions taking place. And look, I mean, I love the people who somehow think that, protesting is old. Well, the reality is we still see protests happen in places all around the world. So it's amazing if other folk around the world have figured out that protesting still works. It's crazy for us to somehow think it doesn't work here. But it is still about the people who are on the front lines, who are putting their lives on the line on the streets to actually fight for civil rights and voting rights.
That's right. Civil rights lawyers, you do the work. We're in the courts fighting the battles, but we could not do this work without our courageous clients. So I want to bring in Reverend Gregory Drumright to talk firsthand about what's been happening in North Carolina.
Well, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. What is happening in North Carolina is not unlike what happened in Selma, Alabama. As a matter of fact, everyone around us is saying that it feels like Selma 2020. We have been fighting against racial inequality, bigotry and bias, white supremacy, Confederate monuments that don't seem like they're going to be coming down anytime soon by the hand of public officials. We've been fighting a Bull Connor-esque sheriff and local police department, which actually kept folks from getting to the polls, registering and voting on the final day of one-stop voting on October 31st. So we've had our hands full. The justice community of organizers, our coalition, Justice for the Next Generation, Alamance Alliance for Justice, you'll hear from Quincy in just a moment, and so many more organizers from up and down the East Coast are joining us in these streets, and the movement has been growing by thousands.
Thank you, Reverend Drumright. And it's heartening to see you there with the young leaders who have been leading the fight on the ground. I want to bring in Elizabeth Haddix, who is one of our extraordinary attorneys at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, who has filed a very important lawsuit to protect the sacred civil rights of Reverend Drumright and others. Elizabeth?
Yes, well, the lawsuit is actually the second lawsuit we filed against Alamance County Sheriff Office in just a matter of less than 6 months. The first one was actually, which Reverend Drumright was also a plaintiff on, was filed on July 2nd after about the county's policy of prohibiting protests there at the Confederate Monument, which of course, like most in many towns across the South, sits right in front of the historic courthouse. It's also the site of the historic lynching of Wyatt Outlaw, the first elected official in Graham back in 1871. And so that is the place where Reverend Drumright and Quincy Ellison and so many amazing people have led others to gather to speak and protest. And the suit that we filed on November 2nd, just a couple of days after the October 31st chaos and terror that the Graham Police and the Alamance County Sheriff's Office created, is actually going to be amended tomorrow to add another for a total of 13 individual plaintiffs, including children who were injured by the pepper spray and the chaos that was created by these law enforcement officials, and several people also who, like Reverend Drumright indicated, were unable to vote, unable to even register to vote in the election that day, so couldn't vote on November 3rd either.
An incredibly important lawsuit that we have filed to protect the rights of those protesting in North Carolina, brought under Section 11B of the Voting Rights Act and the Ku Klux Klan Act. So just a reminder that we're still dealing with Jim Crow type voter suppression in North Carolina and so many parts of our country. Elizabeth, thank you for your work.
And I'm sorry, Kristen, I can't hear you. So if...
Let's see if we can get that worked out. Let's to get it worked out where she can hear us. And so let me know if we have her back. Is Quincy there?
Yes, hi, I'm here.
Hey, Quincy, how you doing?
I'm well, and yourself?
All good.
Well, Quincy, we're thrilled to honor and recognize you as a Black woman who has been fiercely fighting the good fight on the ground.
And Elizabeth, can you hear us now?
Okay, great. But Quincy, I want to ask you to just share some of your thoughts and perspective about the fight that's underway in North Carolina. And thank you for your leadership.
Yes, hi, and thank you. Thank everyone that's on this call, as well as the members of the community. We have been in this fight. Pretty much we've been active and on the ground since July 11th, when we had our big demonstration. Alamance Alliance for Justice reached out for assistance from Pastor Drumright, just due to the...
Can Henry?
due to the restrictions of not being able to protest, two people not being able to stand together and demonstrate in Graham without being arrested. So once we did begin to mobilize and demonstrate, organizing within our organization, we also started building alliances with other organizations to help do the work that was necessary. Here in Alamance County, we are greeted with so much force and tension from law enforcement. We spend weeks of planning. Our organizing works for the purposes of not being considered or not being perceived as violent, or not people not anticipating us coming to the town and rioting. So we spend time planning these demonstrations to make sure that we come in peace, and we have the message being clear that we're coming in peace, and also so that way we're all on one accord, because as you can see what happened on October 31st. But one important thing I really do want to mention, we've been on the ground organizing all summer, since July, pretty much every week. Good trouble, peaceful, not rioting, not damaging property, but we've never been pepper sprayed. But that day on October the 31st, when we were leading marchers to the polls, that's the day that Alamance County decided to pepper spray us and restrict us from proceeding the march to the polls. So I'm grateful that there are people and representatives like the Lawyers Committee and other representatives that are able to assist us with the things that we're not completely aware of, or the legalities and different things like that. That means a lot to us. So as an organization, I'm grateful for our organization, Alamance Alliance for Justice, and for Justice for the Next Generation. And just like Pastor Drumright said, all of the organizers and or individuals that are doing this work is necessary. And even though we may not see huge progress, the little victories that we have are very necessary. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for your amazing leadership and bring you both back in, because, you know, what I find most remarkable about kind of what's happening on the ground in North Carolina is that, you know, this shows the power of not just lawyers, but lawyers working with the activists doing the hard work on the ground, and, you know, the elected officials. It takes all of these pieces to really have a movement, and you all really represent that. And, you know, we're joined by Ben Crump, the amazing Ben Crump, who has been fighting on behalf of families and communities impacted by police violence for years, and doing so all across our country. And Ben was on the ground in North Carolina. He is always working
He's on the
hard.
ground somewhere.
Exactly.
He's hopping on this here from the car.
Yes.
Ben, where are you?
Hey, I am near Orlando, Florida, and when you call Roland Martin, I answer.
Well, glad to have you here. Christian is going to take it away with the questions for the panel.
Yeah, I mean, Ben, you were standing right by Reverend Drumright's side as he was fighting those recent criminal charges that were leveled against Reverend Drumright in a way that truly felt retaliatory. Why don't you just talk about your perspective about what's happening on the ground in Alamance County?
Yes, ma'am, and thank you so much for your leadership, Kirsten. You and the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights have always been on the forefront. I am honored to work with Elizabeth, who represents the organization and represents the people who have been marginalized, victimized, and disenfranchised in an incredible way. So I want to acknowledge her hard work and standing right there with me, as well as Attorney Jason Keith and representing Reverend Drumright, and these amazing young people known Roland Martin as the Justice for the Next Generation. I mean, it says a mouthful. And when you stood in Alamance County and we were having the press conference outside of the courthouse, one of the things that just astonished me, they had this guy in a pickup truck ride through, and he yelled out, "Get the hell out of here. Get out of our county." And that was indicative of what voter suppression looks like in 2020. And that's why I think it's incumbent upon national organizations like the Lawyers Committee, national personalities like Roland Martin to come and stand with these young people, much in the way like people stood up with John Lewis and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee back in Selma in 1965. And it's so very important because nobody could have predicted what would come of those young people taking a stand in Selma, Alabama, just as I don't think they can predict what will come of the Justice for the Next Generation and the Graham 12 taking a stand for our people to register to vote. And I'll say this last thing, Kirsten. I mean, Reverend Drumright, who's an incredible leader, showed me pictures of the Confederate observance event. They had all these white nationalists with their Confederate flags and semi-assault weapons. And nobody thought they were a threat to the point where they had to arrest them and charge them with a felony. But when young Black people go and exercise their First Amendment rights and they say that Black lives matter, then they become the most dangerous threat in America. There's something wrong with that where you have these two justice systems in America. Madam President, you have when the white nationalists take over the Michigan State Capitol, Roland, as you reported so well, nobody tear gas them. Mm-hmm. Nobody shoots them with pepper spray. Nobody arrests them. But in Florida, in North Carolina, when Black people stand up, these young Black people, they are criminalized and tried to be made convicted felons. And we cannot allow that.
Well, Ben, thank you for your leadership and for standing up and for literally and figuratively always being on the move. We're grateful to be in this fight with you. And I just want to give the last word to Reverend Drumright and the team of folks that you've got with you. You are the future, and we're so grateful for all that you're doing right now.
Yes, this is the, whoa. Okay, so this is really a surprise. This is the first time I laid my eyes on this award that you all sent to us. Thank you so much. I shared this with Quincelin, Alamance Alliance for Justice. I shared this with Attorney Crump, Attorney Haddix, who's been like, a sister from another mother this entire movement. Thank you, Elizabeth. I shared this with our local rock star attorney, Jason Key, and the entire organizing community that is fighting for justice for the next generation.
Reverend Drumright, thank you for all that you do. And we're just grateful to stand behind you. And we're going to keep fighting with you and do our part to make sure that we are standing up to protect your right to vote, your right to protest. And we're just grateful for you and your leadership.
Thank you.
All right, Reverend Drumright, Ben Crump, Quincelin, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Elizabeth as well. Thank you very much.
Hey, keep fighting the power, y'all.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We certainly appreciate it.
Yeah. And, I'll just say Quincelin in particular, I feel like this has been the year of Black women who've been on the front lines of so many fights. So just really grateful for her being such a source of inspiration for young Black women across our country.
All right, you got the Whitney North Seymour Award.
Yes, so it's my great privilege and honor to recognize our next awardee, Teresa Wynn Roseborough. She's the Executive Vice President and General Counsel and Corporate Secretary for Home Depot. She wears many hats. She helps to lead the world's largest home improvement retail store, where she leads the company's legal functions, retail operations, litigation, risk management, and among many other issues. And before joining Home Depot in 2011, she held several positions in the legal department of MetLife. She was formerly a partner at the firm that is now known as Eversheds Sutherland, and she's got more than 30 years of legal experience, including government service as Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the U.S. Department of Justice. She also served as a law clerk for the late Justice John Paul Stevens on the United States Supreme Court. Her name has come up on the short list of prospects for the U.S. Supreme Court. She clerked for Judge James Dixon Phillips of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, and has also worked in the Department of Defense in West Germany. She's an all-star, and she's championed criminal justice reform for many years. She served on the Georgia Council for Criminal Justice Reform, whose recommendations helped to dramatically reduce the over-incarceration of Black people and people of color in the state of Georgia. She supported criminal record expungement programs and pushed to ban the box on employment applications. And she's used her influence internally and externally to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. She's been named on as one of the nation's top 25 influential Black women in business by the Network Journal. And she truly is one of America's top Black attorneys. But, Roland, she is also a member of the board of directors of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, and her civic engagement and leadership has been just extraordinary. And so I'm really thrilled and honored to get the opportunity to recognize her today. And she's joining us live from Georgia. Teresa, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for all that you do to advance the cause of justice.
Kristen, thank you so very much. And thank you for those humbling words. And I can safely say that I am the least deserving honoree that you recognized today. And it's so amazing to hear the work that's been done by Melissa and Sadiq and Reverend Dunright and Ben Crump, my hero, and Elizabeth. You are the courageous folks on the front lines, and stand in awe of all that you've accomplished and know how many lives you've touched and how many lives you've changed, not just in one moment, but in ways that will resonate through their communities for the rest of their lives. So thank you for all that you've done, and for the amazing partnership that you have with the Lawyers Committee. I echo what Melissa said. I think that it's not just an obligation or a responsibility of our profession to engage in this work. It's really, truly professionally enriching to have the opportunity to be inspired by this type of engagement and to live up to the dream of making our country a better place for everyone. And I just want to take an aside to say that I'm a child of Brown versus Board of Education. I'm a child of Thurgood Marshall and others that came before me and laid a path. But I'm also a child of the culture of service and integrity of the very first law firm that I joined, which is Sutherland, Aspel, and Brennan, now Eversheds Sutherland. And that firm not only embraced me and connected me to the Lawyers Committee, their work with the Lawyers Committee then and now reflects their appreciation of the obligation and privilege and enrichment that comes from using our profession to make communities stronger. And I wanted to call out the examples of leadership provided to me by Randolph Thrower, Bill Bradley, John Fleming, Judy O'Brien, Nick Christakis, and others that have served on this board. And Nick, I just wanted to highlight, you're saying that the announcing Evershed's decision to mark this holiday season with a gift to the Lawyers Committee on behalf of the clients of the firms really deepens the enormous pride I have in having begun my career under the teaching of the great leaders in that firm, including yourself and John, who continue to serve on this board. And I'm privileged and proud, and hope you will allow me to share this award with you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. And, As we close out, I know that you are there in Georgia, a place where we are and have been deeply engaged in many battles against voter suppression. What is it like on the ground there in Georgia right now as we get closer and closer to that runoff election? Are you seeing people who are energized? Are you seeing people who are getting their absentee ballots and turning them in?
The grounds rate excitement here in Georgia is incredible. But in the presidential election, by this same point in time, 1.6 million absentee ballots have been requested. To date, till yesterday, 1.4 million absentee ballots have been requested. And for there to be a drop off between a presidential election and a runoff is to be expected. But to have it be this close shows that we're going to have, for a non-presidential election, one of the highest turnouts ever. Really impressed, too, with the fact that people are concentrating on the tools available to extend the election cycle beyond just one day. There's a lot of focus on early voting, on getting absentee ballot applications in the mail. I personally have received 2 absentee ballot applications mailed to me by organizations making sure that I have opportunity to access an absentee ballot. I get 3 or 4 or 5 text messages an evening from organizations saying, hey, I'm Valerie. Hey, I'm Patricia. Hey, I'm Mike. I just want to make sure you understand how to be registered, where you can early vote. Please contact me if I can help you. At Home Depot, we have HomeDepotVotes.com, which is an externally facing website that goes out to all of our associates and makes sure that they know how they can register to vote, where they can vote, where their early voting places are. And I'm proud to announce that we're going to make sure that all associates have at least 4 hours off on Election Day to vote. But we're also trying to make sure that they don't wait till Election Day to vote, that they focus on the earlier period of time. I think that we're going to see strong turnout. It's going to be razor thin. These are hard-fought battles. People know what's at stake for our country and for their communities. But the energy and passion to make a difference is there. And so I feel confident that all of our communities are working hard to make sure that everybody exercises their right to vote.
Thanks so much, Teresa. Roland, we need Black women on the bench. We need Black women on the front lines in the fight for justice. We need, Black women lawyers. But we also need Black women in the highest echelons of corporate America who can help to advance the cause for justice. And Teresa is one of those people. So a real honor to get to recognize her today.
All right, Teresa, congratulations. Thanks a lot.
So
thank you.
So today is International Human Rights Day, and our final honoree today is Gay McDougall, and it is most fitting that we're celebrating her and her iconic achievements on this day. She's a Lawyers Committee alum, and she is also a recipient of the MacArthur Genius Award. She is somebody who spent her illustrious career working on issues of race, gender, and economic justice, not just here, but in the global context. And she's been a leader on human rights within the UN for over 3 decades. She's served for 6 years as the UN Special Rapporteur on Minority Issues. She's traveled to 17 countries for the UN to study discriminatory laws and practices. And recently, she completed 8 years of service on the UN Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination that oversees compliance with the International Convention on Racial Discrimination. And she's played a leadership role in the UN Third World Conference Against Racism in Durban. Gay is a woman of great courage and vision and tenacity, and she has been the focal point of many historic moments. She was a member of the South African governmental body that was created to administer South Africa's first democratic elections in 1994, which elected President Nelson Mandela and ended apartheid. And you can see her right there standing by Nelson Mandela's side as he cast a ballot in South Africa's first free election post-apartheid. For 15 years, she served at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under Law as the director of our Southern Africa Project, where she worked closely with South African lawyers to secure the release of thousands of political prisoners from jail. In 2015, the government of South Africa bestowed on her the National Medal of Honor for non-citizens for her contributions to the fight to end apartheid. She spent the next 14 years as executive director of Global Rights, a human rights group that worked with activists in over 10 countries. And she truly has had a trailblazing career that's filled with stories of excellence and achievement. And it's just a thrill and an honor to recognize Gay for her extraordinary achievements in the fight for justice, not just here domestically, but globally. Welcome, Gay, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to thank the Lawyers Committee for the honor and the beautiful award. And I want to thank the Lawyers Committee for having supported me as you did over the 15 years of my working in and about South Africa and Namibia. Those were truly phenomenal experiences. You know, I think that as I sit here and listen to your cooperating lawyers and talk about working with communities in this country, I had the same kind of phenomenal experience working with South African lawyers, Namibian lawyers, as they made efforts to defend political prisoners and to find ways to challenge apartheid laws and structures in the courts. So it's been, in that regard, a phenomenal ride, and it was icing on the cake to be appointed to the Electoral Commission that ran the 1994 elections. Truly memorable experiences.
Yeah, well, that was 26 years ago, and I know that since that time that you have continued to do extraordinary work to advance gender and racial justice. You have traveled many miles, and I'm sure have racked up, you know, quite the load of frequent flyer miles throughout the decades, Gay. But what are 2 or 3 lessons that have really lived with you through your journey?
Well, there are a few. I mean, first of all, that there are groups in every region of the world, practically every country, that are forced to live on the margins of their societies. Some are targeted by the way they look, some by their religion, their gender, the language they speak, but they all wind up being the poorest of the poor. And having no voice in government and hounded by the police. But I think the other point that sticks with me is, and this I think we see very much from our own experiences here, is that that kind of exclusion ends up hurting or costing the larger society a great deal. Exclusion has a, you know, productivity and an innovation cost, but also, you know, it creates a democracy deficit that's hard to repair. And the meanness and callousness that goes along with it really diminishes the soul of a nation. Any exclusion that resists changing on the basis of persuasion or of morality or law or what have you, ultimately ends up being forced to change by disruptive means.
Right.
One clear lesson of history is that people always oppose being held down too long, and they always win.
Right, right. Right. And, parting words, today is International Human Rights Day. We did not plan it this way, but why don't you just tell the audience a word about the meaning and significance of International Human Rights Day, and maybe connect that to the Black Lives Matter movement, which is really having impact all across the globe.
Well, yeah, it is the day that we globally celebrate the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I would say that this has been a phenomenal year. And through the sacrifice of George Floyd, like the sacrifice of Emmett Till, a movement has been sparked that is interracial, international, and intersectional. And it's the largest and most sustained street actions that we've had, and it's been picked up all over the world. And so the level of solidarity has been phenomenal. And so it has led others to go out into the streets in Hong Kong and Thailand and Belarus and Nigeria, in South Africa, Kenya, Brazil, whatever, because people power is infectious. And so I think that Black Lives Matter has been credited rightly for moving people forward to demand their rights around the world. And finally, I would say that this year, December 10th, should be celebrated as not only International Human Rights Day, but also the year in which finally the leadership of Black women has been recognized like never before. Hashtag
Absolutely.
Black women rule.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gay, congratulations. Thank you for all that you do, and thank you so much for being a part of today's celebration.
Thank you.
So this marks the end of our program, but in many ways we are beginning a journey as we go into 2021.
Yep, always more work to do.
What a year it's been. I'm just thinking about the people, the giants that we lost this year, John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, Justice Ginsburg.
Reverend Joseph Lowry.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, a year of loss. I'm thinking about George Floyd. We got to speak their names. Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. We owe them a debt. We've got to finish the work, the unfinished business of getting the policing reform and racial justice that communities are demanding. But what I know is that without the partnership and solidarity of lawyers across the country, without the courage of our clients, without the communities that are out there on the front lines marching and protesting, we cannot get this work done. So I am optimistic as we move into 2021, but grateful to have this chance to really reflect on what a remarkable year it's been, and to do so with you today, Roland.
And of course, the work that y'all do requires resources, so let people know how they can assist the Lawyers Committee. Yeah.
You can visit our website, lawyerscommittee.org, lawyerscommittee.org, and hit that donate button and follow all the great work that the staff and our board members are doing each and every day to advance the cause of racial justice. Thank you.
All right. So, folks, we surely hope you enjoyed this virtual awards celebration for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Surely congratulations to all of the honorees. And as Christian said, there's a whole lot more work to do. And so we, of course, feature their work a lot right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And so we're certainly happy to assist them in what they do. Folks, be sure to take care. And again, be sure to donate. And remember, this is the end of the year tax write-off. So you're looking for a tax write-off, any amount that you give, it doesn't matter whether it's $1, $5, $10, $20, $50, $100, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000. They certainly can appreciate it because we need people, we need our legal warriors on the front lines fighting in the courts while others are fighting in the streets and others are fighting in corporate America. Folks, thank you so very much for joining us. Take care.